Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, devotees. So here we go. We will read from Srila Prabhupada-lilamrita and make a few comments probably as we go. So first of all, some prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripa sindubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, right, so devotees. Srila Prabhupada is in England, just outside London, at John Lennon's place called Tittenhurst Park, a big, opulent mansion with huge gardens, 68 acres, and a lot of it was like ornamental gardens. So anyway, yeah. And John Lennon, I mean, he sort of interacted with Prabhupada a bit, but not much. But George was coming regularly, and he was interacting regularly. So, okay. In September of 1968, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Satsvarup about his stay at Tittenhurst Park. Quote, "Here there is a nice big hall, exactly suitable for a temple. I have begun to give lectures here on specific days, but there are no outsiders coming." Prabhupada wanted to preach to the quote-unquote outsiders, and if they wouldn't come to him, he would go to them. His first outside meeting arranged by the devotees. Oh, no, we read this, didn't we? Camden Town. No, we didn't read this. Anyway, if we did, it doesn't matter. No, we read that. We didn't read this. No, I just read it myself afterwards. That's what happened. All right. His first outside meeting arranged by the devotees was at Camden Town Hall in the heart of London. But I commented that it's not in the heart of London. You don't remember that? Anyway, doesn't matter. Let's just carry on. and was well attended both by Britishers and by Indians. After Prabhupada's brief lecture, only about 15 minutes, a lively question and answer began. Woman, would you say Krishna is God or Krishna is love? Prabhupada, without love, how can Krishna be God? Prabhupada's so astute. Woman, I know I did, but it's okay. We'll carry on. Woman, no, I asked you, because Prabhupada's asking her, without love, how can Krishna be God? Woman, no, I asked you. Prabhupada, yes, that is the real position. Krishna means all attractive. Anything which is all attractive, you generally love. Man, then the particle of the Supreme Being, man, is also all love. That's us, by the way. That's his hypothesis. And what would you say? If you were asked that the particle of the Supreme Being, man, that's us, is also all love, how would you answer? Anyway, don't try. Prabhupada, yes. We are also all love, yes. You are part and parcel of Krishna. You want to love somebody and Krishna wants to love you. This is loving exchange. But instead of loving Krishna, you are trying to love something else. That is your trouble. The love is there in you and Krishna. And when the love will be exchanged between you and Krishna, that will be your perfection of life. So the love is already within us. But we still, in general, people have the tendency to direct their love elsewhere other than Krishna. We all know all about that. So, but if we direct our love to Krishna, that will be the perfection of our lives. Man, thank you. Indian woman, would it matter if I worshipped any other? Would it matter whether I worship Krishna or Shiva or Christ or Buddha? Would it matter? Prabhupada, if you worship Shiva, you'll get Shiva. If you worship Krishna, you'll get Krishna. Why do you expect Krishna by worshipping Shiva? What is your idea? The Indian woman. My idea is, would it matter? Prabhupada, don't you suppose if you purchase a ticket for India, you'll go to India? How can you go to America? Indian woman, this is not the point. Prabhupada, this is the point. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Yanti deva vrata devan, pitrin yanti patri vrata. Indian woman, but my point is, Prabhupada, your point you understand. Why don't you understand the description of Bhagavad Gita? If you worship demigods like Shiva and others, you'll go there. If you worship Krishna, you'll go to Krishna. What is the difficulty to understand? So you see, Srila Prabhupada, he's very tuned in. It's not that he's made a mistake and misunderstood the question that, who's it better to worship or what will you achieve by worshipping? Her question is, does it matter? And Prabhupada is explaining how it matters, but she doesn't get it. She doesn't get it. Yeah. So anyway, she continues, Indian woman, do you think that Shiva is a demigod? Prabhupada, yes, why not? Indian woman. But Krishna says that it doesn't matter the way you worship. All means have the same goal and you'll reach the same goal. You can take the different paths, but you'll come to me eventually. I mean, that's such a totally typical, spaced out idea. Prabhupada, try to understand. Suppose you have to go to the 42nd floor of a building and you are going up one after another. So the goal is the 42nd story, but you cannot claim that after going a few steps that I've come to the goal, the 42nd story. The path is one, that's all right, but you have to reach the ultimate goal. You do not know what is the ultimate goal. You simply say all paths reach to this goal, but you do not know what is the ultimate goal. A young hippie stood up and shouted, you remember that, I'm sure, "Hey, Swamiji." People in the audience turned around and looked. You said if we're not careful in the next life we'll become a dog. But I want to tell you that I don't mind if I become a dog in my next life. Prabhupada replied, "You have my blessings." And the young man sat down. Oh my gosh. One-night lectures in scattered places around the city proved further the need of a temple. Prabhupada had experienced a similar situation in New York City in 1965. At that time also he had no temple. His audiences would listen respectfully and then disperse, and he would never see them again. To become Krishna conscious, however, a person needed to hear about Krishna repeatedly, and for that, a temple was required. Once Prabhupada had his temple established in London, thousands would be able to come and hear about Krishna, take prasadam, and appreciate the lovely deity form of the Lord. A temple would provide guests with regular, intimate contact with the devotees of the Lord. And this was essential. In the absence of a temple, however, Prabhupada was prepared to go on lecturing all over London. Krishna's teachings, Krishna's kirtan, and Krishna's prasadam were absolute good. They would act regardless of the external situation. Conway Hall was a 500-seat auditorium in Red Lion Square in central London. Yeah, this is a famous, well, there's a couple of classes from here which are quite famous. Actually, what is it? It's the introduction to Sri Ishopanishad is, I think, the first class. There's certainly one of the classes Prabhupada gave here at Conway Hall. By arranging a series of 12 lectures over the next 3 months, the devotees hoped to oblige Prabhupada to stay in England at least that long. Because, you know, Prabhupada, he had been staying that long in different places. He stayed in San Francisco the first time, actually, I'm not sure, but at least 4 months, maybe 6, I forget. Then in Los Angeles, he stayed for 3 months. Montreal, he stayed for 3 months. And, you know, by the time I joined, for Prabhupada to stay, when we first got Bhaktivedanta Manor, Prabhupada stayed, I don't know exactly, we'll probably find out later as we go through the book. But at least a month Prabhupada stayed. At least a month. And then I think he went somewhere and came back for a while. Right, so, yes. Gurudas had drawn up a list of lecture titles and printed 50,000 handbills. Admission would be 2 shillings and 6 pence. Hare Krishna. This is one thing which devotees in some parts of the world do. They charge for hall programs, public programs. Yeah. And, they get good crowds because, in some people's minds, there's a tendency to think that if it's free, it's just something with no value. Yeah. So by charging money, like in Russia, sometimes they charge, I think it's approximately 100 rubles, which means 25 rands, at least 20 to 25 rands. And people come because they think, oh yes, something substantial. Okay, the first night at Conway Hall, about 100 people attended. Prabhupada sat on a cushion atop a table, leading kirtan, while his disciples sat on the floor. Yamuna played harmonium, and Mukunda and Kulashekar played mridangas. Prabhupada's Radha Krishna deities stood on their altar on a separate table beside Prabhupada. At that stage, Prabhupada traveled with small, like this size Radha Krishna deities. And I think now they're in New York, but I could be wrong. They might be in Mayapur, Prabhupada's personal deities. Right. A Hare Krishna mantra banner hung against the back wall. Guru Das had billed tonight's lecture Teachings of the Vedas. So I think it is the introduction of Ishopanishad. And Prabhupada explained that Vedic teachings can be understood only by hearing from self-realized saints. After Prabhupada's lecture, the audience gave a sustained round of applause. Prabhupada answered questions and had Yamuna lead a final kirtan. The next day, Prabhupada wrote to a Dr. Shamsundar Das Brahmachari in India. I spoke for about 1 hour, and after that they continued clapping, which confirms their appreciation. At the second Conway Hall engagement, when Prabhupada stood during the kirtan and began to dance, the devotees on stage joined him, dancing in a circle. Ishan played his trumpet, and even Saraswati, her diapers showing beneath her short dress, jumped up and down in ecstasy. Each week would bring another Conway Hall meeting, and Prabhupada's dancing became a regular feature. One night at Conway Hall, an Englishman stood and asked, "Why is it you don't try to help the people of your own country? Why did you come so far? Why don't you simply approach the big politicians? There are big politicians to try to help there." Prabhupada, you are a great politician. Therefore, I'm approaching you. Is that all right? Another man asked, if this is the absolute truth, how come there's so many people in London, but not so many people are in attendance here? Prabhupada, When you're selling diamonds, you don't expect many customers. But if you're giving cut glass, the fools will come. We have a very precious thing, this Krishna consciousness movement. Don't expect that all the foolish people will take to it. Some sincere souls have come. You please also take it. Prabhupada felt encouraged by the response of the English. Regularly, the audiences would join in the chanting and dancing. Prabhupada wrote, "In London, things are going on nicely, and last evening we had a meeting in Conway Hall, and several hundred persons were joining us in chanting and dancing. After the meeting, one reporter from the biggest London newspaper came behind the stage to get further information about our movement for publication in his paper. So I'm very encouraged to see the nice reception that the people in the news medias are giving to our activities in London." Late in October, Prabhupada spoke at the English Speakers Union to a predominantly Indian audience. He began his talk. "Although we're a small gathering today, this is a very important meeting. India has got a message. You're all respectable Indians present here in an important city of the world, London, and I have come here with an important mission. It is not the same mission as Indians generally have who come here and to other foreign countries to beg something. I have come here to give something. So you please try to cooperate with me." On October the 30th, Prabhupada lectured at Oxford Town Hall. That's where the university is. His talk was basic, although embellished with more Sanskrit quotes than usual. His disciples had not expected much of a response from the Oxford students, yet the hall was filled. And when Prabhupada stood and gestured for everyone to raise their hands and dance, practically the entire audience responded. While Mukunda played the huge pipe organ. You know what that means? In the churches you get, in some, the big churches is massive things. So Mukunda was a keyboard expert. And hundreds joined the chanting. Prabhupada held his arms high and began powerfully jumping up and down. He wrote, "Yesterday we had a very successful meeting at Oxford at the town hall. About 350 boys, girls, old men, ladies and gentlemen participated, and we made them all dance and chant with us, every one. After the meeting, many boys and gentlemen came to congratulate me. Prabhupada received an invitation to appear on Britain's most popular TV talk show, Late Night Lineup. The interviewer, accustomed to snappy repartee, tried to engage Prabhupada in his style of conversing, avoiding long philosophical answers. "Swamiji," he asked, "do you have a concept of hell in your religion?" "Yes," Prabhupada replied, "London is hell." The host appeared stunned, as if beaten at his own game from the start. Prabhupada continued, "It is always damp, cloudy, and raining. In India, the sun is always shining." I mean, it's an amazing point, India. Unless you're there in the rainy season, the weather is just incredibly good. It's just amazingly good. We go on parikrama for a month and it never rains. Not one time. And you don't have to think, is it going to rain? What will we do if it rains? You just carry on. Right. The host appeared stunned. Oh, well, okay. Prabhupada continued. Okay, yeah. The interviewer was still at a loss for words. And Prabhupada, perhaps sensing the man's embarrassment, added, of course, it is a very great credit to the English people to have established such a great civilization in such a climate. There were other questions, and Prabhupada talked for an hour. Explaining the Krishna consciousness movement and philosophy. The next day, a London newspaper announced, Swami calls London hell. The Hare Krishna mantra record was still high on the charts in England and throughout the continent, and this fame led a Dutch television company to invite Prabhupada's disciples to Amsterdam, all expenses paid, to do a show. They would have only 5 minutes of airtime, but Prabhupada accepted it. 5 minutes, he said, is sufficient. We will preach the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness in 5 minutes. Prabhupada and his party took the ferry from Dover across the English Channel to France, and then traveled by train to Amsterdam. The television studio located outside the city was in a modern air-conditioned building with constant loudspeaker announcements, artificial plants, a TV in every room, but no windows. The receptionist brought Prabhupada and his disciples to a windowless room with painted concrete walls. In India, Prabhupada said, we wouldn't consider living in a place without windows and fresh air. I want to sit by a window. So the devotees checked through the entire building until finally in the 3rd floor hallway, they found a window. Moving their chairs with them, they went with Prabhupada and sat by the window. Listen to this, devotees. Listen to this. Are you ready? By the year 2000, no one will see the light of day, Prabhupada said. Cities will be forced to live underground. They will have artificial light and food, but no sunlight. I guess that's going to happen in due course. In due course. The producer of the program arrived, surprised to find that the Swami was also going to be part of the act. The surprise was a pleasant one, and he welcomed Prabhupada to his show. Now, what I want you and your group to do, he explained, is to sing your record, Hare Krishna mantra. You don't actually have to sing out loud. We're going to play your record, and you mime. Pretend you're playing those instruments. Pretend you're singing. He allowed that afterward Prabhupada could speak for 2 minutes. Just before Prabhupada and the devotees went on stage, they had to wait in the wings while a local Dutch group danced around, pretending to play their saxophones, trumpets, and drums. Then the producer brought in a table with a cushion on it for Prabhupada and seated the devotees around Prabhupada on the floor. The cameras began, the record played, and the devotees started to mime. Suddenly clouds produced by dry ice, rolled in on the set, a quote-unquote mystical effect. As the devotees disappeared under clouds of carbon dioxide, only Prabhupada remained clearly visible. Seeing the special effect unsuccessful, the producer motioned the devotees to stand and dance beside the Swami. The song ended and a camera closed in on Prabhupada. "Now you have 2 minutes, Swamiji," the producer said. Prabhupada began, quote, "We have been chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. This is a transcendental sound vibration, non-different from the Lord. The Lord's name and his form are the same. Please chant this sublime sound, and your life will become perfect. You'll become happy, and you'll realize your true nature, that you're an eternal servant of God, Krishna. This process is called Bhakti Yoga, and we request everyone to take to this chanting. Thank you very much." Prabhupada was pleased, as his disciples' record continued to be a hit in Europe. He wrote to someone, "The Hare Krishna record is selling very nicely. Yesterday it sold 5,000 copies, and this week it is on the chronological list as number 20. They say next week it will come to 3, and after that it may come to 1. So they're very much hopeful of this record," unquote. To Satsvarup in Boston, Prabhupada wrote, "The Hare Krishna record is going on in England nicely, and I heard that in Australia it stands 4th on the list of 50 important records." The Hare Krishna mantra became the number 1 song in West Germany, number 1 in Czechoslovakia, and among the top 10 all over Europe and even in Japan. With the income from the record, the devotees began paying their bills and financing the renovations of the Berry Place temple. Sometimes the devotees would perform at concerts with professional groups, and sometimes they would receive invitations to appear in nightclubs. After one particularly late and nasty nightclub engagement, Yamuna went to Prabhupada and told him what the place had been like. Prabhupada called for all the devotees. "These places," he explained, "are not good for brahmacharis. The principle is that we have to make devotees, so we have to think where we're going. If we're going somewhere to preach, but we can't make any devotees there, what is the use? So we have to think like that." He said he wasn't forbidding them to preach in the nightclubs, but he told them to be careful. One of the devotees asked if showing slides of Krishna mixed in with psychedelic slides was permissible. Prabhupada said no. Krishna should be on a throne or an altar. If they watered Krishna consciousness down, it would become idol worship. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any comment or question? Yes, Prabhu. Oh, we don't have. Anyway, you just speak it, I'll repeat it. Oh, okay. Just go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Traveling in service of Srila Prabhupada, the one book you wrote, you mentioned in the in the introduction, Prabhupada, he says something about Narada Muni's curse and how he has a similar thing, so he can't stay
Right.
in a place for too long.
Right.
And I think it was close to the end. He was only in places for 1 or 2 weeks or something.
3 days.
Oh, 3 days. Yeah. So the sannyasi disciples took that responsibility.
That's
is
what
it-
Prabhupada said.
It's so like, is it mainly for sannyasis that responsibility is handed on, and now does it go through parampara that the next generation of disciples will take on that?
Well, you know, the thing is, sannyasis have a particular responsibility when it comes to preaching. They have to do it. That's basically what they're meant to do, just preach. So, and Narada Muni is a sannyasi, and Prabhupada is a sannyasi. So it's particularly for the sannyasis. It's particularly for the sannyasis. But it can also be for others, brahmacharis, brahmacharinis. Under normal circumstances, at least when I joined, we were traveling a lot, really a lot. I mean, really, really a lot. And there were ladies traveling parties too. And we had a ladies' party, well, in Cape Town, but they would travel sometimes. So, yeah, others can do it, but it's particularly the sannyasis, they have that as a specific responsibility to do. Of course, well, sometimes Prabhupada would also tell certain sannyasis, particular sannyasis, that he wanted them to stay somewhere and organize and preach, but organize. So for some of them it was like that. But the thing is, sannyasis, wherever they're staying, they'll generally preach. Yeah. It was the curse of Daksha, the same Daksha we're reading about. I think it's described in the 6th canto, if I remember correctly. Narada Muni preached to his sons, who he wanted to become householders and produce children. But Narada Muni convinced them not to do that. Don't become a householder. As you know, there was a sort of a mantra or a slogan in about 75, 76. Take sannyas, not grihast. So yes, sannyasis, the thing is, even if they have to stay somewhere, and even, you know, myself, I've been here, between here and Joburg, for 2 years now, almost. But we've been doing a lot of preaching, really a lot of preaching. And actually it's been very effective, extremely effective. Arguably, at least in certain respects, more effective than traveling and preaching, in certain respects, not in all respects. So yeah, it's particularly the responsibility of the sannyasis, but the brahmacharis and brahmacharinis, they can also take the responsibility, share it. It's possible.
I had one more question. Word jugglery. Like it said that we shouldn't really become attached to the flowery words of the Vedas and people who use word jugglery. Sometimes though those methods are very effective in, you know, preaching, And I mean, sometimes like Prabhupada was conforming to the news reporters' repertoire of, or what was the word? Yeah, responsive conversation. So using some of these like fancy word plays while preaching, is it something we should
See,
get
that's
attached
something
to?
else.
Yeah.
The flowery words of the Vedas, that's the Karma Kandya section,
Oh, I see.
which, I mean, it's all very beautifully expressed, all the Vedic literatures. The language, the vocabulary, and how everything is used. It's very beautifully done, including in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. But what Krishna is referring to is the Karma Kandya section of the Vedas, which basically means the four Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva, because they're explaining how to go to the heavenly planets and what it's like to go to the heavenly planets. So that's what's being referred to. And that's why Narada Muni criticized, chastised Vyasadeva, that you've made material life sound or appear to be just too nice. And it's misleading. So he chastised him to some degree. Certainly he corrected him. Yeah. So that's what it is. You know what I mean by the Karma Kandya section? Yeah. The four Vedas. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Ah, yes. If you've got a question, just speak it. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Right. Right. So the question is that we just read how Prabhupada was traveling with Radha Krishna deities. But normally, in our experience, like here in this Radharanath temple, the standard of worship is very high. So how could it be? How could Prabhupada travel with Radha Krishna deities? Was it just a special thing because he's Prabhupada, or can it be done? Or right? That's the point. Yeah. So, it's we just read a little while. Oh, it was in a class I gave a few weeks ago, how Lokanath Goswami was worshipping Radha Vinod, and he would carry Krishna Vinod in a bag like a bead bag and walk around massaging him while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Yeah, anyway, the thing is that Srila Prabhupada's on such a level, and we're not on anything like that at all. So Prabhupada with us, Prabhupada was very concerned that we would not become sort of easygoing, and we wouldn't become familiar with Krishna. So therefore Prabhupada really insisted on a very high standard. As we have here is the standard that Prabhupada set. 6 offerings, 6 artis, clothes changed twice a day. Yeah. And in that way, it's a very demanding service, and you can ask Oh, do you go on the altar sometimes? You do, yeah. And anyway, so she knows. It's a very demanding standard. Yeah, really demanding. Devotees are cooking all day, and on the altar, there's devotees on the altar all day. And the backup, we have, I think, the chief backup here on the seat, and there's another one. Are you a backup too? Anyway, you're a backup, aren't you? Yeah, she's a backup. And you're a backup. Yeah. So there's a whole team to maintain the standard. Prabhupada said that you need at least 12 Brahmins. Yeah. So, that is a very important factor for us, to maintain that standard for our sakes. For a devotee who has extremely deep devotion like Prabhupada, to do what would have been a much simplified process would be acceptable, because bhakti is the thing. But before we can develop bhakti, we have to become focused in the right ways. And our tendencies towards being focused in not the right ways, we have to get over that. And it really takes time. Yeah. So generally, yeah, we don't allow. I have a handful, I don't even know exactly, but it might be 4 or 5 or something disciples who have Radha Krishna deities, but at home. Yeah. Traveling around, someone like maybe Indradyumna Maharaj, Govinda Maharaj, maybe. But otherwise, it's not advised for traveling devotees to worship Radha Krishna. They can worship Shilas, because they only have to be worshipped once a day. You can just do the worship for half an hour and put them to rest and wake them up the next day. But Radha and Krishna, generally, particularly for people like us, you got to maintain this very rigorous standard. Very rigorous. Is that okay? Oh yes, okay. Ganga Mata. Give it, yeah?
Maharaj, if a spiritual master in his next life continues to preach somewhere in the material world, could a disciple follow, and if so, what allows the disciple to be eligible to do that?
To do what?
To follow his spiritual master, to continue serving and preaching with him.
It's possible. Certainly possible. It's not that it's just going to happen, but it's possible. Yeah.
How would the disciple become eligible to continue serving in that way?
Well, they'd have to really serve very nicely until the moment they drop. Yeah. And they'd have to pray for that too. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Okay. I think that's all. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.